Numbers are thrown out all the time. Are they proof of some truth or just fluff that bluffs us? These statistics need some serious looking into. I'm Brendan Fernandez, and that's what I'll do. Because some numbers are just worth figuring out. In this episode of It Figures, we look at what Singapore imports to look red hot and stay on top. What are some of our more prominent and unexpected imports? While steering towards economic excellence, our little red dot has, in the last 40 years or so, managed to primp her crowning glory of green canopies, revamp her gleaming wardrobe of glass and steel skyscrapers, shape the contours of her shores, and surface as the globe's most desired destination for the world's young and educated. But looking so good and doing so well comes at a price. We'll crunch the numbers behind some of Singapore's most prominent and unexpected imports. What does it cost our nation to put her best foot or best face forward? As a nation, we import a lot. Why? On the surface, it's simple. We lack. Last year, here are some of the products we imported. We're only capable of generating a fragment of our consumption needs. On a deeper level, as a trading nation, we constantly re-export our imports after adding value to them. Such re-exports add to our GDP. So our imports are held in a balance between being a cost and becoming a profit. The amount we've spent on imports has increased continually over the years. On the horizontal, the years from 2003 to 2012, the last 10 years. On the vertical, the amount our tiny red dot spends on imports. As you can see, in 2003, we spent about 237 billion Singapore dollars. That figure has been steadily increasing. Till 2009, there was a slight dip. We spent only $356 billion that year. Why? Well, according to our Ministry of Trade and Industry, that's the impact of the global financial crisis. We experienced a drop in goods exports by 18%. Similarly, we imported 21% less goods. Since then, we've been spending more on imports. In 2012, we imported $474 billion worth of commodities. That's about a 100% increase since 2003.
As the economy continues to grow, the size of the economy gets bigger, the populations continue to grow, so therefore the consumptions of imports will also increase. So I think this is essentially just a natural reflection of economic development in Singapore.
Which top imports are we buying more of to sustain our development? Our fifth most important import in 2011 was office and data machine parts, all the stuff your photocopiers, fax machines and printers are made of. But in 2012, aircraft and associated equipment took fifth place, as Singapore worked on becoming the #1 stop in Asia for aerospace maintenance, repair and overhaul. At number 4 is telecommunications equipment, which is essentially all the smartphones, tablets and any telephony equipment you connect with every day. Crude petroleum or unrefined oil straight from the ground places third on the list. At number 2 are electronic valves, stuff we use in manufacturing. Now that used to be number 1 on our list until refined petroleum products or refined and processed crude oil knocked it off the top. This happened when Singapore became Asia's leading oil trading hub. 31% of the amount we spent on our imports last year went to petroleum. That's a total of 147.1 billion Singapore dollars. So where does all that petroleum go? Some of it is used to fuel our vehicles, some to power our city, and some to manufacture other petroleum byproducts. Some of which is right here, under my tires. Singapore's public road network has grown about 25% since the 1990s to about 9,045 lane kilometers by 2011. A lane kilometer takes into account the total length of all the lanes of a stretch of road. So if a road is 1 kilometer long but has 4 lanes, that road is 4 lane kilometers long. Now, if we lined all our roads up in a single straight lane, that would take us from Singapore to Romania. And our road network is still growing as we speak. Petroleum is used to make asphalt and bitumen, the stuff that our roads are paved with. And it isn't just our road network we're extending. We exported about 17.6 million Singapore dollars worth of asphalt and bitumen to help pave road networks around the world too. We only consumed about 11.5% of the oil we imported, and the rest we sold, thanks to the fact that we have a huge oil refinery industry. Refined petroleum products are not just our #1 import, they are also our #1 export, contributing to 5% of our country's GDP.
Oil imports accounts for about 1/3 of our total import value. And if you look at it from the export perspective, oil and its related product accounts for about 1/4 of our total export value. But of those imports, oil imports, are actually refined into some petroleum products and then subsequently re-exported out to the rest of the region.
So now you know what Singapore buys to fuel her miracle economy. But while she's at it, what else is she splurging on in order to look so good? This is probably our most famous stretch of greenery. One of the reasons this 20-kilometer stretch was planted was to leave an impression on foreign investors. An impression of efficiency and organization. Kartini Omar is a director of parks at NParks. She was part of the team who imported the rain trees to adorn the road. Now these rain trees, originally from the American region, might be the most noticeable, but they're not the only plants to be imported to create this stretch.
Exactly 50 years ago, the focus was to plant as many trees as possible. However, after 15 to 20 years, there was a need to add color, to add variety, more character, interest as well as vibrancy to our landscape. That started the global search for more plants.
Imagine losing most of the color we've got in our greenery now. That's what it would be like if we never began importing flowers or foliage in 1979. Because of our climate, only the native plants from our primary forest would flourish. So it would look pretty much like Bukit Timah Nature Reserve everywhere.
We will not be able to enjoy in terms of the rich biodiversity that we are able to support and enjoy right now. It's definitely something which we will not be happy with. There's lack of character, there's no interest.
We didn't just add color, but diversity as well. In 1997, it was revealed that 75% of the tree population in our parks and along our roadsides was made up of trees from only 20 species. By 2013, that number had doubled to 41. Right now, our government-managed greenery covers about 10% of our total landmass, and about 70% of the trees we see around us are imported.
Lush landscape, the rich biodiversity, is certainly an identity that we have created. It's an icon. This botanic gardens that we are at right now, the Gardens by the Bay, another world-class icon that we have created. All this would not have been possible without that concerted effort to look for plants to add that character, to add that interest to our landscape.
All this diversity doesn't come free. Park spends 62 million Singapore dollars every year maintaining all this greenery. And that amount excludes this next ambitious venture. Gardens by the Bay South Garden, the only part that's completed, is already the size of 76 football fields.
What we're trying to do is bring in some of the very interesting plants that locals, our Singaporean may not even have a chance to see them.
Right.
When you transplant a tree, literally you are actually cutting the root ball of the tree. That is as good as you're cutting away a limb of a human. So if you don't take care of the tree during that process, once the tree is transplanted, they may never recover.
Do you think it's possible to quantify the value of the trees that you have here?
Some of the trees is actually is no way you can quantify them. Sometimes even if you have the money, you can't even bring in some of the trees we want. One of these sapling, do you see the lychee tree over there?
Yes.
Okay, that tree was actually donated by Thai princess.
Right.
So this tree instantly become very meaningful because it's actually the gift from the Thai princess.
Right.
When it comes to the emotional value,
Right.
the princess tree that I just showed you,
Exactly.
there's no way you can buy a tree from the princess.
Right.
She won't sell you the tree.
So that's priceless.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
The diverse greenery from all over the world that fills Gardens by the Bay sits entirely on reclaimed land. After the break, find out which other imports Singapore is scrambling to make even more room for. We've looked at some of our nation's top imports on the economic and cosmetic fronts. But at the base of any country's pyramid of needs, people. Just take 2012. For our economy to achieve the GDP growth we did in 2012, we needed a workforce of 3.36 million working adults. So, how much of that demand did our local population manage to supply? Imagine that these 10 robots represent the labor force Singapore needed in 2012 to power our economy. To achieve the economic growth we had in 2012, we needed all 10 of them. In 2012, our resident workers were only able to make up 63% of these robots. Our fertility trends mean that every citizen who leaves the workforce is replaced by 2 others. Now you think that means our workforce is expanding, but that's too slow to keep up with the increase in workforce size that we need in order to hit the 4% GDP growth that we'd like to have. So where do those remaining 4 robots come from? Well, they have to be imported. Currently, foreigners made up 37% of our workforce. What sort of returns is this bringing in? We had labor economist Walter Teixeira answer our question.
You really need to think about the following. What would happen to this particular economy, to this company, to this person, if this foreign worker was not here in Singapore? Let's take, for example, the presence of a foreign nurse in Singapore. What happens to the economy if that particular foreign nurse, or maybe 100 foreign nurses like that person, were not here in Singapore? What would happen? Unfortunately, there are no simple answers to this question. And the reason why there are no simple answers to the question is that in the absence of these foreign workers, the economy would adjust. For example, more local Singaporeans would go into nursing. The prices of nurses would essentially change the economy. The level and quality of care might also be affected. All of these impacts are very hard to estimate, essentially. And so that's why economists have actually studied the issue of what the impact of immigration is, and it's been very hard for them to come up with very concrete and I think precisely identified numbers in many cases.
How do we determine their contributions then? We came up with a simpler way. We looked around us. In 2012, about 293,000 foreign construction workers completed at least 1,600 commercial buildings and 29,000 residential units. Not too shabby. And these are only the most visible contributions.
If you want to talk about the headline figures, the research is that foreign immigration does bring net benefits, but it's going to be inescapable that you face both costs and benefits. When you have immigration into sectors that helps to reduce the prices of goods and services that you want to consume and enjoy, immigration is good for you. But when you face competition in your own professional sector because of immigrants, that's going to be more of a mixed bag for you.
It appears Singapore needs a foreign workforce to keep our engines going. But how attractive is Singapore as a destination? From 2007 to 2010, Gallup asked hundreds of thousands of people from 148 countries around the world 2 questions. 1. If you had the opportunity, would you like to move permanently to another country, or would you prefer to continue living in the country you're in? And 2. To which country would you like to move? Special attention was paid to the responses from 2 groups. Young people aged 15 to 29, and people who were educated, meaning they had earned at least a bachelor's degree. To estimate the gain in the young or the educated people a country could experience, Gallup deducted the number of young or educated people who wanted to move away from those who wanted to move in, and divided that number by the country's total population. Positive percentages indicate a brain or youth gain for that country. Negative percentages, a brain or youth drain. So how did all the countries in the world fare in terms of attractiveness as destinations? Let's look at our Asian counterparts. Now, if everyone was able to move wherever they wanted, Malaysia would see 11% more educated residents and 34% more young people. What about the more developed Asian countries? Surprisingly, Japan would see a net outflow of 13% of its educated residents. Korea would lose 29% of its educated residents and 4% of its youth. Hong Kong would lose 28% of its educated residents and 5% of its youth.
When you look at many of the potential destinations in the region, a lot of countries in the region don't use English as the main language for business and work. You may also find the culture of the place you want to go to intimidating. So in a lot of countries, the culture is fairly homogeneous. If you're not Japanese or Korean ethnically, you're going to have a harder time fitting in.
So how did Singapore fare? We actually surfaced as a major outlier. If we threw open our doors, we would have 6 times the number of young people, and our educated population would quadruple. In fact, we fared even better than other developed nations like New Zealand, Australia, Canada, Sweden. But one thing to note is that the population of a country affects its scores and ranking. The formula used divides the number of potential migrants by the country's initial population. And because we have many potential migrants and a small population, we have very high scores. Are we still such a golden destination then?
We have a good system of governance. We have an open economy, one that has been very welcoming, I think, to both immigrants as well as free enterprise. We have a multicultural and multi-ethnic society. I think that Singapore is almost unique in having the whole package. Policymakers have put, I think, quite concerted effort into thinking quite hard about immigration policy and into making sure that the kinds of immigration talent that are desired in the local economy are welcome.
The costs and benefits of importation might be difficult to establish, but Singapore's reliance on it isn't. Excluding people, just looking at commodities. In 2012, Singapore imported a total of $374 billion worth of goods alone. That's a lot of money, but how does it compare to other Asian countries? Well, we came in between Malaysia's $181 billion and South Korea's $514 billion, while Japan tops the list at $830 billion worth of imports. But we're the smallest nation, and the only one that has almost no natural resources. Is $374 billion normal then?
If you look at the chart here in the second chart, Singapore's import value as a percentage of GDP is about 37%. And that is quite significant, comparing that we are only a small economy. It's in fact higher than countries such as Korea and Taiwan. So the reason why we have such high import value as a percentage of GDP is because of Singapore as a regional trading hub. The other way to look at it is you look at import per capita. In 2012, for example, Singapore import about $71,000 US dollar worth of imports per person, and that is quite substantial. It's much higher than countries such as Hong Kong, Korea, and Taiwan. So in a way, I think the Singapore economy, if you talk about the perspective of import, we are certainly punching above our belt.
A massive 474 billion Singapore dollars for a tiny nation. Perhaps it's the price we pay for progress, economic excellence, and first world status.